My parents gave my younger brother $10,000 for a house and told me I should keep renting until I became more realistic. They laughed when I said I wanted to buy property. 18 months later, my brother asked which house was mine, and I looked him in the eye and said, "Which one?" That was the thing about being the overlooked son. People did not hate me. They did not openly insult me. They simply forgot to expect anything great from me. In my family, my brother Kyle was the one with potential, even when potential was the only thing he had. I was Jordan, the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who paid his own bills and somehow made responsibility look boring. It happened on a regular Tuesday night at my parents' house in suburban Ohio. My mother had made meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans, the same meal she always cooked when she wanted everything to feel normal. Dad sat at the head of the table, Kyle sat across from me, and I sat in the same chair I had occupied since high school, the one closest to the kitchen because I was always expected to help clean up afterward. Halfway through dinner, Mom opened the drawer behind her and pulled out a white envelope. She placed it beside Kyle's plate with a smile so proud it almost hurt to look at. Kyle opened it, glanced inside, and froze. Then he laughed. "No way. Are you serious?" Dad grinned. "You're ready, son. Time to start building your future." Kyle pulled out the check and held it up like he had just won a prize. $10,000. Just like that. Not for a birthday, not for a wedding, not because he had earned it. It was simply help because Kyle wanted to buy a house, and in my parents' eyes that meant he deserved a push. Mom reached for his hand. Every young man needs a little support when he's taking the next big step. Kyle was 26. He had been fired twice, quit once, and still called Mom when his car insurance payment surprised him, even though it came every month on the same date. His credit score was a mystery nobody in the family wanted to solve. But somehow he was ready for homeownership. I was 28. I had worked full-time since college. I managed an apartment complex, handled tenants' maintenance calls, late rent notices, emergency leaks, lease renewals, and angry people who believed clogged sinks were personal attacks. I had never asked my parents for rent, gas, money, or a rescue check. Yet when I looked at that envelope, I knew better than to ask why there had never been one for me. "That's great," I said. "Congratulations, man." Kyle nodded like he had expected nothing less. Mom turned to me a moment later, almost as if she had suddenly remembered there was another son at the table. "How's your apartment, Jordan, still in that little place downtown?" Little place. That was what she called it. Not practical. Not affordable. Just little, like my entire life was something temporary and slightly embarrassing. "It's fine," I said. "Actually, I've been thinking about buying something too. Maybe a duplex. Something I could rent out." Dad laughed before I could finish. It was not a kind laugh. It was the kind of laugh that decides who you are before you have a chance to explain yourself. "Jordan, come on," he said. "Investment property is serious business. That's not something you just jump into because you collect rent for somebody else." "I know," I said carefully. "I've been studying it." Kyle smirked at his plate. Dad shook his head. "Managing apartments doesn't mean you're ready to own one. There's risk, debt repairs, tenants, taxes. You need real money for that." Mom patted my hand. "Sweetheart, we just don't want you getting in over your head. Maybe focus on renting somewhere nicer first." Baby steps. Baby steps. I was 28 years old, and my mother had just told me to take baby steps while handing my younger brother $10,000. I wanted to ask why Kyle's mistakes looked like promise while my discipline looked like fear. I wanted to ask why he got help becoming successful while I had to be successful first before anyone believed I deserved help. But I did what I always did. I smiled, nodded, and swallowed the words. "You're probably right," I said, but I knew they were wrong. That night, I drove back to my apartment in silence. It was on the third floor of an old brick building with no elevator, thin walls, and a neighbor who played drums after midnight like he was trying to defeat sadness through noise. My rent was $1,150 a month for a space so small the living room and kitchen felt like one confused hallway. The carpet was stained, the bathroom fan screamed, and my couch came from Facebook Marketplace, with a smell I had never fully identified. But it was quiet enough for me to think. I opened my laptop and pulled up the listing I had been watching for 2 months. A bank-owned duplex on the east side, peeling paint, overgrown grass, one boarded window. The listing photos were ugly enough to scare off anyone who needed a dream to look pretty before they believed in it. But I had run the numbers again and again. The asking price was $89,000. Both units already had tenants. Combined rent was $1,400 a month. After mortgage taxes, insurance maintenance reserves, and vacancy savings, I could clear around $400 monthly. Not rich, not flashy, but real. I had saved $22,000 over 3 years. No vacations, no new car, no expensive dinners. My old Honda Civic had nearly 200,000 miles and a check engine light that felt permanent. While Kyle was being rescued, I had been learning. Books, podcasts, spreadsheets, online courses, real estate forums, late nights after work. I knew the risk. I also knew the opportunity. My agent Lisa had already told me the property would not wait forever. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. I opened Lisa's email thread and typed, "Let's make the offer." My finger hovered over the send button for a few seconds. Then I clicked it. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Kyle. I did not ask permission from people who had already decided my limits for me. For once, I kept my dream away from the people most likely to shrink it. And 3 weeks later, I would walk into a title office, sign my name until my hand cramped, and walk out with 2 sets of keys to a property no one believed I could buy. They had given Kyle a head start. So I decided to build my own finish line. The next 3 weeks felt longer than the previous 3 years. Once Lisa submitted the offer, I expected the bank to reject it, ignore it, or suddenly discover a richer buyer. Instead, on a Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Offer accepted. I stared at those 2 words until the tenant in front of me asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, but my hands were shaking. For the first time in my life, something big was happening because I had made it happen. Then came the paperwork. My loan officer, Patricia, wanted pay stubs, bank statements, tax returns, explanations for deposits, and proof that my savings were actually mine. Every day brought another request. I answered them at night from my kitchen table while Kyle sent paint samples to the family group chat. His house was moving forward too. He and Amanda were buying a 4-bedroom place in a new subdivision, 20 minutes from my parents. It had a 2-car garage, a kitchen island, and a backyard my mother had filled with imaginary grandchildren. Every Sunday dinner became a celebration of Kyle's next step. Mom talked about curtains, Dad talked about equity, Amanda talked about hosting holidays. I sat there listening, passing the roles, smiling at the right moments, while my own future moved quietly through inspections and underwriting. One Sunday, Dad raised his glass of sweet tea and said, "To smart investments." Everyone looked at Kyle. I lifted my water and said nothing. After dinner, I was loading the dishwasher because no matter how old I got, my family role never changed. Mom came in carrying plates. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Just tired. Work still stressful." "A little." She gave me that worried look I knew too well. "Your father and I were talking. If you ever wanted to go back to school, maybe study business, we could help a little." "A little." "Maybe." Study business. Not invest. Not build. Just go back, fix myself. Become easier for them to understand. "I'm okay, Mom," I said. She touched my shoulder. "We just worry about you." What she meant was, we don't see where your life is going, and that scares us. What I wanted to say was, neither do you, because I stopped showing you the map. Closing day came on a cloudy Friday morning in May. I told my boss I had a dentist appointment, wore my best button-down shirt, and drove my old Honda Civic to a title office between a nail salon and a tax place. Inside the room smelled like old coffee and printer toner. Lisa was already there, smiling, like she had known all along. I could do it. The title officer Margaret handed me a stack of papers. Sign here, initial here, date here. I signed until my wrist hurt. I signed my name as borrower, buyer, owner. Owner. That word kept catching in my head like a song lyric I did not want to forget. Finally, Margaret slid a folder across the table and placed 2 sets of keys on top. Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. You officially own the duplex. For a moment, I could not move. No applause, no envelope, no toast at the dinner table, just keys, papers, and a quiet pride that filled my chest. I walked out, sat in my Civic, and called my best friend, Devin. "What's up?" he answered. "I did it. Did what I bought the duplex. I closed today." There was a pause. Then Devin shouted so loud I had to pull the phone away. "Jordan, are you serious? Man, that's huge." I laughed, and it was the first real laugh I had let out in weeks. "Did you tell your parents?" he asked. "No." "Why not?" I looked down at the keys in my palm. "Because they would make it smaller." Devin got quiet. "Then don't give them that chance yet." So I didn't. I drove straight to the property. In person, it looked worse than the pictures. The grass was high, the gutters sagged, and the porch looked tired. But it was mine. Every ugly inch of it. I knocked on Unit A first. A woman in her 50s opened the door. Her name was Maria, and she looked cautious until I introduced myself as the new owner. "The last landlord never fixed anything," she said. "My bathroom sink has been dripping for months. I'll take care of it this weekend," I told her. She studied me like she wanted to believe me, but had learned not to. Really. Unit B belonged to a retired bus driver named Mr. Coleman, who paid on time and kept his apartment spotless. He shook my hand and told me the porch light had been broken since Christmas. "I'll add it to the list," I said. That first weekend I learned owning property was not glamorous. It was wet knees under sinks, 2 trips to Home Depot YouTube tutorials that lied, and receipts that made my stomach tighten. But when Maria's sink stopped dripping, and the porch light came on, both tenants looked at me like I had done something important. And maybe I had. At Sunday dinner the next night, Kyle showed everyone photos of his new house. Mom cried over the kitchen. Dad said Kyle was becoming a real man. Amanda talked about Thanksgiving. Then Kyle passed me his phone and grinned. "Maybe this will inspire you to buy something someday." I looked at the picture. Clean walls, big windows, perfect lawn. "Maybe," I said. I did not tell him I had spent the weekend fixing my own building. I did not tell Dad I had already done what he said was over my head. I simply washed the dishes and let them keep underestimating me. Because now, for the first time, their opinion was no longer the biggest thing in the room. After that first duplex, something inside me changed. I still drove the same old Civic. I still lived in the same tiny apartment. I still showed up to family dinners and washed dishes, while Kyle talked about lawn care like he had invented homeownership. But I was not the same man anymore. For the first time, I had proof that my father's voice in my head could be wrong. The duplex was not making me rich. $400 a month did not turn me into a real estate king. But it was money from something I owned. It sounded like rent hitting my account on the first of the month, like a porch light turning on after I fixed it, like Maria saying, "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," with relief in her voice. By August, I was already looking for the next one. Lisa thought I was moving too fast. "You just bought your first property 3 months ago," she said. "Most people take a year to recover emotionally." "I'm not most people." "No," she said. "Most people sleep." She was right. I checked listings before work, during lunch, and late at night with dinner cooling beside my laptop. I studied neighborhoods like other people studied football scores. I knew which streets were improving, which school districts were pushing values higher, and which properties looked terrible, but had solid bones. Then I found Maple Street. It was another duplex listed for $75,000 because the roof looked like it had survived 3 Ohio winters and lost every battle. One unit was vacant because water had stained the ceiling. The other had a retired mechanic named Frank, who had lived there for 8 years and never paid late. Lisa was honest. "This one needs real work, Jordan." "I know. The roof alone could cost 10 grand. "I know. And you still want to see it. I already ran the numbers." The property smelled like dust, old carpet, and neglect. The vacant unit had cracked blinds, yellow walls, and a kitchen floor curling at the edges. But the foundation was solid. The plumbing was workable. Frank's unit was clean and cared for. He shook my hand and said, "If you buy this place and actually fix that roof, you'll be better than the last 3 owners." That was enough for me. I offered $70,000. The seller countered at $72,000. I accepted. This time buying was scarier because I knew what could go wrong. With the first property, fear came from imagination. With the second, fear came from experience. Repairs were never as cheap as estimates. Tenants were people, not spreadsheet numbers. One bad surprise could eat 6 months of cash flow. But I also knew I could handle more than my family believed. I closed in November. Devin helped me clean out the vacant unit. We filled a dumpster with broken furniture, stained carpet, old blinds, and things neither of us wanted to identify. At one point, he leaned on a broom and looked around. "You really own 2 properties now." "Technically, the bank owns most of both." "Still," he said, "that is 2 more than Kyle bought by himself." I did not answer, but the words stayed with me. The roof cost $9,800. New flooring cost another $2,000. Paint fixtures, locks, and cleaning supplies kept adding up until my savings account looked wounded. Every weekend, I worked until my back ached and my hands cracked from cold weather. At Sunday dinners, my family had no idea. Kyle complained about property taxes. Dad gave him advice. Mom told him every homeowner struggled at first. When I mentioned I had been busy with work, Kyle laughed. "Still fixing toilets for angry tenants?" "Something like that," I said. Dad looked across the table. "You know, Jordan, there's no shame in wanting more from life. You just need a real plan." I almost smiled. A plan. I had 2 mortgages, 2 duplexes, 4 rental units, and a spreadsheet more detailed than anything Dad had ever built. But to him, I was still drifting. By January, Maple Street was fully rented. Between both properties, I was clearing about $780 a month after expenses and reserves. Not enough to quit my job, but enough to breathe differently. Enough to realize I was not trapped in the life my family had assigned me. Then came the third property. It was a small cabin-style house near a popular hiking trail about an hour outside the city. The owner was tired of renters and wanted out fast. The place was dated but clean. Wood paneling, old furniture, a stone fireplace, and a back deck facing the trees. It did not look like much, but I saw what it could become. A short-term rental. I offered $88,000. The owner accepted. For 3 weeks, I furnished it with second-hand finds clearance bedding, IKEA shelves, and framed landscape prints from discount stores. I took photos with my phone and a tripod. I wrote the listing myself carefully and warmly, like I was inviting tired people to escape for a weekend. It booked within 3 days. By summer, that little house was bringing in more money than both duplexes combined. And still, my family knew nothing. At Kyle's birthday barbecue in August, Dad's friend Robert pulled me aside near the grill. Robert worked in commercial real estate and had known our family for years. "Your dad says you're doing property management," he said. Something like that. "Ever invest yourself?" I felt Dad glance over from the patio. "A little," I said. Robert smiled. "Good. Real estate is the best wealth builder if you know what you're doing." Kyle walked up with a beer and laughed. "Jordan, investing." Robert did not laugh. "Why not?" For 1 second, the backyard went quiet. I looked at Kyle, then at Dad, then at the smoke rising from the grill. "Exactly," I said softly. "Why not?" After Robert walked away, the barbecue did not feel the same. Dad pretended to check the grill, Kyle pretended the conversation meant nothing, and I stood there holding a paper plate, realizing my secret was no longer completely safe. For more than a year, I had hidden my success, because hiding it felt easier than defending it. If my family did not know, they could not laugh at the first duplex. They could not call the second one reckless. They could not tell me the cabin would fail before the first guest even booked it. Silence had protected my dream while it was still small. But now the dream was not small anymore. By September, I bought my fourth property, another duplex on the edge of a neighborhood that was slowly changing. It needed repairs, but nothing I had not seen before. The numbers worked, the tenants were steady, and the seller wanted a quick closing. When the paperwork was finished, my portfolio crossed $300,000 in total property value. I still drove the Civic. I still wore work boots more often than dress shoes. I still lived simply because every extra dollar had a job. But on paper, I was no longer the son who needed baby steps. I was a real estate investor with 4 properties, 11 rental units, and monthly cash flow that gave me more freedom than I had ever known. The strange part was that my family still saw the old version of me. Thanksgiving came at my parents' house, the biggest family event of the year. Mom had decorated the dining room with pumpkins, candles, and the kind of cheerful table runner people buy when they want a holiday to look happier than it feels. Kyle and Amanda arrived late, smiling in a way that made everyone pay attention. During dessert, Kyle stood and cleared his throat. "We have news," he said. "Amanda's pregnant." The room exploded. Mom cried. Dad hugged Kyle like he had just won a championship. My sister Jessica screamed and started talking about baby names before Amanda had even sat down. I smiled, congratulated them, and meant it. A baby was good news. It was just hard not to notice how naturally the spotlight found Kyle. Dad was already talking about helping with a nursery. Mom said they might need a bigger emergency fund. Then Dad looked at Kyle and said, "When the time comes, family helps family." I looked down at my plate. Jessica noticed. "What about you, Jordan? Mom said you're doing some kind of real estate thing now." The table quieted just enough for the question to feel dangerous. "A little," I said. Dad frowned. "Real estate thing. What does that mean, investing?" I answered. Kyle laughed, not cruelly at first, more like he thought I was exaggerating. "Dude, investment property takes serious money. I'm aware." Dad set down his fork. "Jordan, be realistic. Owning rental property is risky. One bad tenant, one major repair, and you could lose everything. You should build a stronger foundation first." I almost asked him how many properties I needed before my foundation became strong enough for his approval. Instead, I breathed slowly and said, "I appreciate the advice." The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. I saw Dad and Kyle exchange a look, the same look they always shared when they thought I needed rescuing from my own ambition. Later, while I was loading the dishwasher, Kyle came into the kitchen. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," he said. "I know. It's just this stuff is harder than it looks. My mortgage is killing me. Property taxes, insurance, HOA fees, baby expenses coming. Sometimes I feel like I bought a house just to look successful." That surprised me. For once, Kyle did not sound proud. He sounded tired. "You'll figure it out," I said. He leaned against the counter. "Maybe. I just don't want you getting buried." I nodded, but I did not tell him the truth. Not yet. The truth came out without my permission. In December, a reporter named Michelle Chin called me from a local business journal. She was writing about young investors in the city and had found my name through public property records. At first, I wanted to decline. Public attention felt dangerous. But I was tired of hiding, tired of acting like my life was smaller than it was. So I met her at a coffee shop and told the story honestly. I told her about saving $22,000, buying the first duplex, learning repairs the hard way, and building one property at a time without family money. She asked, "Did your family support you?" I looked at my coffee. "They didn't know," I said. "They thought I couldn't do it." The article went live in January. The headline read, "Local 28-year-old builds real estate portfolio without family help." My name was there, my photo was there, 4 properties, 11 units, estimated portfolio value over $300,000. Monthly cash flow strong enough for me to manage my own investments full-time. At 1123 that morning, Mom called. Her voice was shaking. "Jordan, is this article true?" "Yes." "You own 4 properties." "Yes." There was a long silence. "Why didn't you tell us?" I closed my eyes. "Because when I tried, Dad laughed. You told me to take baby steps." Mom began to cry softly. 10 minutes later, the family group chat exploded. Dad demanded I call him. Jessica kept typing question marks. Kyle asked if the numbers were real. I typed one message. "It's real. I built it myself. No help. No family money. Just work." For once, nobody knew what to say. Sunday dinner after the article felt less like dinner and more like walking into a courtroom where everyone knew the evidence. I arrived early, not nervous, but because I refused to act like I had done something wrong. My old Civic sat beside Kyle's newer SUV, the same as always, except this time I understood something clearly. Looking successful and being successful were not the same thing. Mom opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red, and her smile was full of regret. "Jordan," she whispered. "Hey, Mom." She pulled me into a hug that lasted too long. For most of my life, her hugs had felt like comfort meant for someone else. This one felt like an apology she did not yet know how to say. Inside the dining room table was set with the good plates. Dad stood near his chair, hands in his pockets, looking older than he had looked at Thanksgiving. Kyle and Amanda were already there. Jessica sat beside her husband, quiet for once. Nobody joked. Nobody asked me to grab napkins. I sat in my usual chair. Dad cleared his throat. "We read the article." I figured. "It said 4 properties," Kyle said. 11 units. That's right. And you bought them yourself. With loans, I said. And savings. And repairs I never want to do again. Mom pressed a napkin between her fingers. "We thought you were struggling. I was sacrificing," I said. "There's a difference." The room went still. Dad looked down at his plate. "I told you it was over your head." "Yes," I said. He swallowed hard. I was wrong. Those 3 words did something strange to me. They did not erase the years. They did not heal every dinner where I had been treated like a background character in my own family. But they landed. They mattered. Dad continued, his voice rough. "I saw Kyle needing help, and I saw you as the one who would be fine. Then somehow that turned into me not seeing you at all. I'm sorry, son." Mom started crying. "You were building something right in front of us, and we kept calling it nothing." Kyle leaned forward. For the first time, he looked ashamed. "I owe you an apology too," he said. "I took the money and never asked why you didn't get any. I liked being the one they believed in." That honesty surprised me. "I appreciate that," I said. The room felt uncomfortable. But maybe uncomfortable was what truth felt like when it finally had space to breathe. Dad asked, "Can we see them, the properties?" I thought about saying no. Part of me wanted to keep that world separate, safe from their opinions. But another part wanted them to see what I had built when nobody was clapping. "Saturday," I said. "I'll show you." The tour began at the first duplex. Maria came outside when she saw my car and hugged me like family. She told my mother I was the first landlord who ever did what he promised. Mom cried before we reached the porch. At Maple Street, Frank watered plants near the steps. He shook Dad's hand and said, "Your son saved this place from falling apart." Dad looked at the roof, the fresh paint, the clean windows, and nodded slowly. The cabin was last. Jessica walked through it like it was a magazine spread. Kyle stood on the back deck staring at the trees. "You did all this while we were laughing at you," he said. "Pretty much." He gave a sad smile. "That must have felt good when the article came out." "For about 10 minutes," I said. Then I realized being right doesn't fix everything. He nodded. "Are you still mad I was?" "For a long time. But anger takes up space. I needed that space for better things." Later, we sat outside a coffee shop with paper cups warming our hands. Mom asked if we could start over. Dad said he wanted to understand what I did not control it. Kyle asked if I could help him look at his budget before the baby came. I said yes to some things and no to others. That was new for me. I'm not coming back as the family disappointment, I told them. If I'm here as an equal. Dad nodded. That's fair. 3 months later, I closed on property number 5. Another duplex cleaner than the first 2 and easier to rent. This time, I posted about it online. The caption was simple. Started with savings, sacrifice, and no permission. Property number 5 is proof that you don't need everyone to believe in you before you begin. Sometimes you just need to believe long enough to make them catch up. The post got more attention than I expected. Strangers asked questions. Old classmates sent congratulations. Then Mom commented, "So proud of you, sweetheart. I should have said it sooner." I stared at her words for a long time before liking the comment. That evening, I drove to my first duplex and sat on the porch while the sun dropped behind the rooftops. The paint still needed work. The lawn was not perfect. My Civic still had the check engine light on. Nothing about my life looked flawless, but it was mine. Every key, every scar, every late night, every risk, every dollar saved instead of spent proving something to people who were not ready to see me. My phone buzzed. It was Dad. Dinner Tuesday. Your choice. We'd like to celebrate properly. A year earlier, I would have searched for the catch. Now I just smiled. Sure, I typed. Tuesday works. Then I looked at the duplex, my first small piece of freedom, and finally let myself feel proud. They had given Kyle a head start. But I had built a life no one could take from me, and that was more than enough.